messaged me today from Blank Profile saying you need to put your HIV status on your profile.
Hello, this is a difficult one because while I sympathise that you don't want to put your HIV status on a dating app, in my opinion, any potential partners have a right to know.
First of all, any local laws trump anything I'm about to say regardless. But if you had the legal right to know, it would be codified in law that people have to disclose. And in some places that is the case. But in a lot of places and in a growing number of places, you do not have to disclose because the science says that when you're undetectable, you can't transmit. So it's really none of your business or anybody's business.
Before they even interact with you. And that might sound really intrusive, but
it is
for me, if I knew that somebody had HIV, I wouldn't go on a date with them. And that might sound really callous, but I'm finding that more and more gay men in this instance are refusing to disclose their HIV status.
And that's because the science of you equals you and not being able to transmit and the laws catching up with the science support that.
Because they are afraid that they will be restricted in the dating pool.
And that's right. People such as yourself. And also, listen, let's be real, especially about apps like Grindr. It's and Tinder even. It's so easy to swipe. So essentially, you're just looking for a reason to swipe no on somebody. So if you put out stuff that's perceived as negative, people are just going to swipe. They're not going to take the time. Whereas if someone finds out later after you have even just a little bit of a conversation, that left swipe might be a right swipe.
I do think it is important that any potential partner is told before any sexual activity takes place, whether that's in the dating process or prior to sexual activity.
Let's be very clear. You equals you. When a person is undetectable, they can no longer sexually transmit HIV to their sexual partners. My recent boyfriend of 4 years, we have had sex unprotected the entire time. He is negative. He's not living with HIV. I am living with HIV. I'm undetectable. He has no worries of getting HIV from me, and he is fine. So if that's the case, why is it anybody else's business? If my HIV has no impact, zero impact on your body whatsoever, it's no longer your business. It's mine, and it's my personal private medical information protected by HIPAA to disclose as I please, when I please.
But why would you want it to get that far and then somebody potentially knock you back because they weren't told?
It's our prerogative to decide whether it's worth our time to potentially get knocked back or not. That has nothing to do with you. We get to decide that.
About education, I was brought up, you're potentially the same age as me, where HIV was seen in a negative way, but HIV education shouldn't come about during a dating process, in my opinion.
I personally do think a dating process is a prime opportunity for education. In fact, not just with HIV, but so many things. I mean, when we meet new people, we invariably encounter new circumstances, learn new things. It's all about learning. Life is learning, in my opinion. It's absolutely a prime time to educate, and I've had plenty of fantastic conversations on first dates with people who otherwise would have said no to someone living with HIV, who afterwards were like, okay, yeah, I pick up what you're putting down and I hear what you're saying and it makes sense, so let's continue dating.
We're often asked on dating sites whether we drink or whether we smoke. I was actually knocked back by somebody on a dating app simply because I did smoke. And that's absolutely fine. That's totally their right. And I respect that. But for me, I wouldn't go on a date if I knew that they had HIV.
Okay, regarding the smoking analogy, but it was also your choice to put it on in the app. No one forced you to do that. And no one said it was their right to know whether you smoke or not before they interact with you at all. So the same deference should be paid to someone with their private medical information that has nothing to do with you or your health or your body or your time.
I just wouldn't want to risk getting it myself. Sorry if any of that offends. That's just my opinion on it anyway.
For me, it's less about whether it's offensive, and it's more so about the fact that you're putting a trigger warning on your video, you're apologizing multiple times, but you're still saying what you're saying, and you're still putting it out there. It's not really educated. It's filled with stigma and misunderstanding and this assumption that the world revolves around you and your choices. And this is my problem with a lot of these arguments, is that it's so one-sided. You're only taking into account your personal, selfish desire to know what's going on with me medically from the get-go. Even though people don't put on their profiles, they don't put, I'm bipolar, I have diabetes, I have a disability, blah, blah, blah. That is their prerogative to share when they want. They don't owe you that. You're not entitled to that information. It does not impact you, your health, your body. And what you're not considering is what that means for the person living with HIV. Have you considered that maybe they're living in a small town? Have you considered maybe that their community at large doesn't know that they have HIV and that they don't want the community to know that they have HIV, and that's important? And that telling one person or putting it on an app for everybody to see so that someone can misuse that private medical information and potentially out them to their whole community, to their parents, to their family, to whomever. Did you ever consider that maybe they live in an area where it's criminalized to have HIV? That they might get kicked out of their country. They might get deported from their country for having HIV. Have you considered the fact that telling people just publicly that they have HIV might actually put them in danger, might incite or invite violence into their life, like physical violence or bullying or emotional violence? Or were you only too busy thinking about yourself and your ego and the fact that you wanted to know what's going on in someone else's private medical history?